Hello viewers, today we're going to be cleaning and servicing a Lakewood window fan. There's the Lakewood high stop. This is the Lakewood model T-99 and it's rated for an egregious 1.6 amps. It's powered by two stinking C-frame shaded pole motors, but they are at least Jakel motors, so they're probably good quality even if they're inefficient. This is a very interesting unit. I have two of these. Let me grab the other one just to show it together for comparison purposes. The blade on this is what's most interesting in particular, because it is or looks to be the same blade as the Lasko-looking 9-inch osculating fans from the 70s through the 90s, which was a very good blade on those fans. Very quiet and very effective. So here's another one. This one is branded under Sears, and this one I got from the letter H. We're going to clean and service this one too, hopefully this year if time allows. I'm going to start with the Lakewood one first because I think, based on the grill designs, that it's going to move more air and be quieter. But these otherwise appear to be identical, although this one, there's no branding on the C-frame shaded pole motors that I can see. So they might be Jakel, or they might be some cheap knockoff in place of the Jakels. So I guess this is not completely identical, but there's definitely some striking similarities, and they probably came out of the same factories, even if one had some cheaper parts put into it. I guess the question would be, how the heck did Lakewood get a hold of this blade? I have never seen a Lakewood fan of any kind have this kind of blade, and I've never seen this blade outside of the Lasko-looking fans. It was the desk or table oscillating model, and there was also a window fan that this blade was fit into. So very, very interesting to see that blade on this fan, a Lakewood branded fan. So I've never worked on one of these before, so I'm not exactly sure how it comes apart, but hopefully it's easier than a Holmes. Kind of feel like it would have to be. That's a pretty low bar. So I have a feeling that there's information that we need but don't have in regards to these screws, because there's an array of Phillips and flathead screws. Let's see what the other one has. The other one is the same way. So the likelihood of some random person taking some of the screws out and replacing them on both units is slim to none. So I imagine that the Phillips screws and the flathead screws give us two different levels of access to the unit. I'm going to start with the Phillips ones. Maybe the flathead ones have something to do with the side panels. Quite long screws. What was that cracking sound that we just heard? I don't like to hear random cracking sounds. Things cracking is usually not a good thing. There's either something wrong with this upper screw or it's a different type, because it's not releasing. Well, the bottom is open and this started to come off nicely. And then that was rapidly halted by the top. What the heck? There's no seam. What? How the heck? You're kidding. That's how it comes apart? That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. That's how it comes apart. And it does look like the flathead screws are exclusively for the side panels. Well, that is mighty peculiar. I've never seen a window fan open up like this. But to its credit, this is much, much easier access than the stinking Holmes. It's obscure, but it's easier. These side panels are actually metal. Alright, well, I'm going to take this apart further because I want to wash these grills out. The blades are out of balance, so actually something that we have to do is we have to evaluate these individually. You can't balance these together because it just causes a freak show. So I'm going to take one of these blades off and let's see how out of balance these are individually. Start over here. The blade is stuck. Okay, well that's more pressure than I'm comfortable putting on the motor bearings, so we're going to have to get the puller set out and pull it off with a puller. I'll break some stuff over here in the process. Make some awful metallic screeching sounds in the process. Fortunately, there is a little hole inside the center of the blade hub there, so we should be able to use the puller, at least to some degree. And no, I don't think this is overkill in the slightest. Everything here is getting old and delicate. You don't want to apply any extra force on it than you have to. Alright, that caused it to break free a little bit. That's all that was needed, just to the initial break of the probably a couple decade long seal of it sitting in the same place. So we'll just do the same thing on this one while we're in here. Okay, that should be good. So with that removed, let's see. That's an okay balance. It's not egregious. Oh no, it almost just cut off my other finger. Let's see if this one is worse. This one's better. Actually, maybe not. Now this one is worse, I think. Yeah, we'll have to do some balancing on this. That could use a balancing. Yeah, this one too. These both could use a balance. This one's better than the other one, but they're both a little bit out. Alright, we can do that. We can fix that. Do these motors have oil ports? No, I guess they're not quite good enough for oil ports, but they do claim to be made in USA. So we want to remove these completely. And it looks like we're going to get into the flathead screws now to do that. That's a little bit too big. Before we dismount the motors completely, I want to clean the shafts off a little bit. They're not that dirty, but they could certainly benefit from a quick cleanup before we go to slide the bearing over the shaft. I don't think we have to do any sanding. This is good enough. I'm not seeing any rust, just a little bit of dirt. No, that one might require a little bit of... No, I guess they both require a touch of sanding. Oh, bits of rust here and there. So this is where this is going to get kind of awkward to deal with, because this is not going to want to stay open. This is kind of a peculiar design, and I'm not so sure that I like it. I know I hate the clips here, because these constantly fall off the pegboard like the pieces of garbage that they claim to be. But that's got nothing to do with the fan. Let's get some very fine sanding paper and just do a quick once over on the shafts here. Try to get this as horizontal as possible. These motors are not going to require much in terms of service, just a quick lubrication. But we have to take it apart to do so because they don't have provisions to put the oil in from the outside. So we have to dismantle these anyways, even though they're working properly in the effort at preventative maintenance. Which kind of stinks, because if this had oil ports, this would be a lot easier. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, they're both spinning very freely still. So really there's only the need to take it apart because of the stinking lack of oil ports. So now we should be able to detach this from here. This. Okay, now the only problem is that the cord is passing through here. So in order to really thoroughly take this apart, we would have to we'd have to take the cord off from the switch to pass it through. This isn't dirty enough that it really warrants passing it through the dishwasher, so I think we'll just clean it manually, and in that event we'll just pull the cord all the way through. Because the molded plug can get wet, that's not a problem. It's the motors that I don't want to get wet. Okay, so now we can do the cleaning and keep the motors away. I am going to detach the side panels at this point, which will be our flathead screws. 4 of them are on the outside. So that's kind of interesting way to differentiate, and I'm sure the manual probably says this, but not having the manual, I just had to take a guess. In terms of serviceability, this is landslides better than a typical Holmes. This is very, very easy. It's going to take a few minutes to clean it because of the way that when you have a plastic grill like this, all these slats you got to get in between all these slats, but it lets you get there without much trouble. And we just take these right out of here. And this is now ready to get cleaned. All this is ready to get cleaned. All the side panels, the blades, and the unit itself, all ready for cleaning. What the heck is up with the stinking cleaning area? It's filthy! And this is exactly why I like to clean it at the end of every project, so that when we go to do the next video, it doesn't look like this. Now we have to clean it at the beginning of this project. Good grief. Why is this so filthy? Somebody else must have cleaned something in here when I wasn't here, because this was not like this when I used it last. This is a great example of why you never loan out tools, because people do stuff like this. They'll use tools and leave them filthy and busted up, and then you go to use a tool for something and it doesn't work. It's better. I'm not going to go too crazy with the cleanup because we're just going to make it messy again. But not quite like that. Holy cow. Alright, that's better. Okay, now let's go get the fin parts. Sounds like a snake in here. And we'll get all these things with the blades and the side panels, and then we'll finish with the grill, because I want the blades to dry out so we can put some hot glue on the insides for balancing purposes. Oh, that spring is about to fall off of there. That's not good. I'll make sure that doesn't fall off of there. We need that spring. We need that spring to keep the blade from springing off the fan, off the shaft. assembled wrong to begin with. Because, wow, that was way off. Okay, I fixed it. Now it should not come off. I think that was definitely assembled wrong from the factory. Okay, we'll get a new piece of the melamine foam. I have to order some more soon. Down to like the last 50 pieces in the large order that I put in. Oh, I just noticed that the other microphone is kind of fading on and off. I'm gonna go grab that microphone and bring it over here. It's just a little too far out of the range, I think. So I don't have any. I guess I might be clipping out here now at this point too. Alright, I'll bring this microphone over here this way. The audio is consistent and not putting nature sounds on and off. Oh, this is busted. Oh well. This is a miracle cleaning product. Absolutely incredible. I've never used any other cleaning product that works quite as well as this does. This should clean up fairly easily. It's like a dry, clean dust on here, not like a kitchen or garage sticky, greasy type contamination. This isn't bad. It's so clean that the water's beating up on the surface. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. The cleaning product. Not amazing because I didn't put the towel out to let the stuff dry on. This has got to be low hours. This is maybe one season tops on this thing. Oh, these are different blades. Huh. Ain't that something? These are different blades. Very interesting. Probably forever be a mystery as to why there's two different blades on here. Could be a warranty repair. Could be a pure happenstance that they ran out of this blade and switched to the other one, or ran out of the other one and switched to this one when this particular unit was made. I highly doubt that they're all like that. I don't see why they would be. Okay, now I will go grab the whoa, let's see if we can break the whole place in the process here. Let's get the guards. No, the information's tag just came off one of the motors. Let's take a picture of it so we get it documented. Okay, so now we can work on this without the motors in the way. Yeah, this is proving to be very bulky and difficult to work with here, with this not being able to come apart. This is very bulky, and this cleanup is going to be a challenge. You know what, it might be worth putting this into the dishwasher. There's a lot of little crevices here, and this is super awkward. Yeah, I think we should just put this into the dishwasher, because this is going to be very tedious to clean otherwise. I think I'm going to put it into the dishwasher. We're going to have to remove the wiring from the case in order to put this in the dishwasher. That wasn't a very good connection to begin with. That's our common connection. And then L. Can we just kind of finagle this out of there? No, we're going to have to use a tool. I tend to struggle with getting the wires out of the switches, but this one looks like it should be fairly simple. It was. So whatever brand of switch this is, that's a pretty good design for serviceability. Alright, now we can just pull the wire all the way through the case, which I never even should have considered cleaning by hand. That was stupid. We have the machine for a reason. I'm just going to take this knot out, and then it should pull right through. Okay. We can bring all this stuff back to the studio. We can work on the balancing in the meantime while this washes. Hopefully this will fit in here. This is quite bulky. Oh no. It's not even close to fitting in there. Rats. No, there's no shot fitting in there. This is several inches too big. Potentially, no, that wouldn't even work either. I think there is just no chance in this fitting in here. Is this? I got it all the way down like that. Still wouldn't fit, I don't think. No chance. Okay, so that means we're going to have to clean this manually. And that's going to be a very messy and time-consuming process because of the way this is designed. So this is good and bad. It's easier to get to initially, but then a detailed cleaning like this is extraordinarily tedious. Yep, this stinks. That we can't use the dishwasher. But we'll get it clean. It's just going to take longer than anticipated, that's all. And sometimes that happens. That sprays very quietly. Lots of marks on here, which this melamine foam should clean up very nicely. It is, in fact, cleaning them up nicely. Yeah, definitely mixed feelings on this design. If this would just split apart, as opposed to stay stuck together, I would have zero reservations with this design, but this is kind of goofy. Now, granted, most people will never clean it this far, and that is a valid rebuttal, but some people do. I'm not the only one on the face of the planet that cleans fans like this. I'm part of a dwindling group. It seems like fewer and fewer people clean the fans every year, but there are still some left. For a fully manual cleaning, that wasn't too tedious and it came out pretty good. Okay, now we're going to balance the blades. Balance the blades. So we really only need one motor operating for this, and since this detaches fairly easily and these are already coming out, I'm going to go ahead and detach one of these. Nope, we're not going to, because it's already soldered together and that's not worth disturbing. That's soldered together too. Okay, we're just going to use it with two, even though we only need one. Oh well. So I'm going to put the ambient temperature glue into the other plug there, so I can use this as an on-off control for the motors. We know that the common side of the cord is textured, so the common side goes here, and then the L gets the high side. Yeah, that switch is much easier to work with than some of the other ones I've used. Alright, so what we'll do now, this is already operating, we'll just set that one aside there, and we're going to just put one. I'd like this to not be, there we go. We're going to put one blade on at a time, and let's see how bad the balance is on this. That's actually pretty bad. Yeah, that's really quite bad actually. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a balancing weight in here on one side, and let's see what that does for the balance. Pretty much nothing. So we're going to move it over one notch. Most likely one of these blades is heavier than the other. That seems to have made it worse, so that's no good. Let's move it over again. That seems to be slightly better. But still off. But that might be where it needs to go. Let's try putting it over here. So what this is indicating to me is that this blade here on the bottom is lighter than the other two. Yeah, that's better there. Okay, so that's the blade that this is the blade. This one here, let me just grab a small piece of tape to mark it. That's the blade that's going to need some weight added to it. So we'll stick this here. Now, how much weight is the next question? And that question, unfortunately, is a guess and check like the rest of this is. So let's just make sure that I'm getting this right. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Gotta make sure this motor doesn't get too hot. And if we stick that on there like that. Yeah, that's better. It's an improvement. So now we got to figure out how much glue do we need there. So that's one of the pieces I have. Let's try a larger piece. This is probably going to be too much. If this makes it worse, then it's too much. Yeah, that's worse. That's too much. Okay, so it's going to be a very small amount. So we'll start by just adding a little bit of the ambient temperature glue. All right, let's see what that did. That made it better, but it's still out. So let's add a touch more. I'm going to add a very, very small amount more. We want to do this in very small increments. Although it is removable, it's easier to just put a little bit at a time than have to take it off, because then you're starting over again. That's running smoother, but it's still a fair bit out. I'm going to add some more. That's better still. It's still quite a ways off from perfect though. And we may never get it perfect, we're just looking to make it better, but there's still a significant room for improvement. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now it's shaking significantly less than it was. I think we're going to add... Stop it! I think we're going to add more still. This motor is getting pretty warm. We're going to have to put a fan on that in a minute. Actually, both of these motors are getting pretty warm. That's getting pretty reasonably well balanced now. I'm not sure how much more we're going to add. I need to grab a fan though to put on these motors because they're getting pretty hot. These motors are air cooled, and since we're turning this on and off so much, they're not really getting any cooling. So we're going to have to add some cooling like this. At least for that motor anyways, that should solve the problem. I'm going to cut this one in half to get a more precise amount. And let's see if we add this little half a piece, does that makes it better or worse? It makes it better, I think. This is not an item of precision. This is an item of improvement. Does it work better than when you started? That's the only question that we're trying to answer here. We're not going to get it perfect. With this method, it's practically impossible to get it perfect. Yeah, it needs more glue actually. It's better with those two pieces in there. So that's quite a ways out. Wow. I think you could even use more. Let's put the little half piece in there. That's getting pretty smooth at this point. I don't think we're going to go too much further than this. Let me add that second piece in there and see if that makes it better or worse. At some point we're going to hit a point where it starts to get worse because there's too much in there. I think we're going to add a little bit more and then we'll call it there, because it is getting much better. Now I got to get these little test pieces out of there. And this motor's getting pretty warm. We got to bring some cooling to this motor. I think we went too far. It's shaking pretty good again. It's a risky run when you don't just stop when it's better. Yep, we went too far. So we got to get some of that out of there now. This is a slippery slope of trying to get it perfect. You likely never will. Well, you just want to go for improvement. Now it's going to be a little bit more difficult to remove. I got to remove some of this now, but not all of it. Fortunately, Cold glue is pretty forgiving in this respect, so we should be able to just cut a portion of it out. Okay, got a portion of it out. Well, now it's crooked on the shaft. That's not helpful. Now I'm dissatisfied with this because I had it better just a couple minutes ago. It was better than this. I think it needs to go more in this area here. Unfortunately, this is a guess and check. There is no good way that I'm aware of to do this. Well, there's still some vibration, but that's pretty reasonable. I'm going to just emulate one more time, adding a small amount of glue right over here. Let's see what that does. Not really seeing a big difference anymore. This is so tedious and annoying. That's running pretty smooth like that. Now if I take that piece out, what's the difference? Yeah, it is better with that piece. Alright, so we're going to add one more spot of glue. The motors are getting really hot. Add one more spot of glue over to here, like this. That's where that piece was. And as long as this is not horrifically worse, which is possible, we're going to call it here. Yeah, that's in pretty reasonable balance now. I'm content with that. It's not perfect, but it's much better than when we started. And that's what I'm interested in. Okay, so this blade has been successfully balanced. Oh, that's great. Okay. That took a lot of weight to get that rebalanced. These were both pretty far out of balance, which is stupid. Why can't we make a balanced plastic mold for these things? What? Oh gosh, look at that vibrating. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Or should we say, that's pretty bad! Alright, so now we start from square one here with a piece of glue. And let's see. This glue, or this blade is a little bit more difficult to work with because the pattern does not allow placement of the glue directly where the blade is. That's worser. That's more better. So that likely will be our point of lightweightness. Let's just check to make sure that there's not a better option. Let's try this blade. Nope, that's worser. Okay, so the most betterer spot is this blade. So now we have to just start adding glue until it gets better and hopefully stop before it starts to get worse again. And it's either not enough or too much. Let's get the small piece, stick that in there and see how that fares. That's more better, so it needs a little bit more. Okay, that's better. That's significantly better. That's pretty much to the point of just leave it alone because now it's better. Just check it one more time with this extra piece here. Put that in there, see if that makes it better or worse. Actually, that's almost perfect. So we're just going to add a touch more, and then we'll call this good. Just a small amount, not much at all. One more iota. and then we're going to call that done. I gotta take a break to charge up the camera. It's only at 8%, the battery. I don't want this hanging over the edge like that. That's gonna cause annoyance to me. So I'm gonna trim this off here. And we'll have to add a little bit more to compensate for taking that off. Yes, it is that sensitive. That's getting pretty good. I think I'm going to call it there because that's much better than it was. It's hardly vibrating at all. That's running pretty smooth. That's reasonable. It's still not 100%, but like I said, we're aiming for improvement here, not perfection, because we'll probably never get to perfection using this goofy method. Okay, so that's good now. Let's get this ambient temperature glue off the shaft. So I'm going to take a quick break to charge up the camera, and then we'll come back, service the motors, and reassemble everything. We have a charged up camera now, and the balancing is complete, so we can cancel this out of the frame, and we can cancel all this ambient temperature glue stuff, and of course we'll keep these pieces for next time, and this piece for next time. Very useful. What are you keeping that for? Why don't you just throw it out? Because then I gotta get a new one. What's the point in that? Doesn't make any sense. Alright, so let's lubricate the motors. Can cancel this out as well. Okay, so cancel. Need that still. We can cancel that. Cancel this. I'm not going to cut anything else. So this information's came off of one of the motors. There's the informations. Okay, so these motors are pretty clean, so there's not really much to do besides just sliding the bearings off, oiling it, and sliding the bearings back on. There's no cleaning to be done because they're running properly. If these had oil ports, we wouldn't even have to do this much, but unfortunately they don't. Also on the scale of unfortunacies, my smaller nut driver has gone missing, and I haven't seen it in a couple of weeks now, which is a problem because now we need it and it's not here. So I'm gonna have to get out this other apparatus and use this instead. Those seem kind of small. I think that they're actually a bit smaller than what we would have needed anyways. Oh, are they default? This is default, and it's kind of loose. So it must be metrics. That's not what I was expecting. I'm very surprised it's metrics because these are made in USA. The motors. So I'd expect them to be our screwed up imperial system. called the Imperial system, but really should be called the inferior system, because it's not base 10. It's very confusing. Huh. That is actually quite dirty. Well, it wasn't behaving like it needed to be cleaned, but that absolutely needs to be cleaned. That is filthy. Okay, we'll clean it. And we have to make note that the shaft goes to the left. Huh. That's very surprising. Every now and again you get a surprise. Didn't look dirty in the slightest, or it didn't seem dirty in the slightest because it was working properly, but it's actually filthy. Yeah, what do you know? It's totally filthy. Never would have guessed. Alright. That's our rear thrust washer. I think we've got a couple on here still, which we should probably go ahead and clean them all. There's more washers on there still, but these are not interested in coming off. This one is a felt washer. And there's a plastic washer in there as well. Quite the array of washers, and it's filthy all the way down. Come on. This is very difficult to remove because it's like set down inside there. Jeez. I'm trying to be pretty delicate here because these plastic washers, they do get brittle over time, especially in a motor like this where it's going to run hot because it's a stupid shaded pole. But this is filthy. I got to get it out to clean it. There is an adequate amount of oil here still. It's just that the oil is getting very dirty. It's due to be cleaned. Okay. So there's that. That's the front, that's the rear, and it goes like that. Since we're going to have to do some cleaning of the shaft, I'm going to get both of these opened up at the same time so we can do the cleaning at the same time. I'm very surprised these are working as well as they were, given the condition of these bearings. Or the appearance of the bearings, rather, all the dirt that's in there. Usually when you see them like that, they're pretty stiff. Okay, so we do not want to lose the orientation of this. That's the front. This is missing a washer. That's got that washer. And then, what the heck? Or did I think I just mixed up the parts, that's all. Okay, no, we're good. And here we go with this again. Yeah, this one's pretty dirty too. It's not a one-off. Well, that's fine. We'll get them cleaned out. I just wasn't expecting that at all. Whoa. This one's coming off a lot easier at least. Alright, so we'll clean all these washers individually because they've got all dirty gummed up oil on them. I'm surprised Jakel didn't use better quality oil than this. Usually we see this on really cheap motors because poor quality oil is used. But these are not cheap motors. Very disappointed to see this going on inside something like this. These are pretty respectable motors. Inefficient, but respectable build quality. Okay, the washers are cleaned up. Let's see if this cleans up. We have to actually polish it. No, that came most of the way clean. I think we're going to polish it. There's still some pretty significant wear scores on there. Yeah, especially on this one. Wow. This looks like it was running dry. It wasn't. It was working fine, but that's pretty bad. I'm really surprised this was working properly, looking like that. That's quite abysmal. Alright, I gotta get some isopropyl alcohol, and I got a new tube of the Simichrome polish because the other one I accidentally left it in the car, and then it got hot and sunny out, and then the polish expired or spoiled. So I had to get a new one. Not ideal. More money to spend. That shouldn't have to have been spent. It was a stupid error. But unfortunately, sometimes stupid errors happen, and then you gotta pay for it. Both literally and metaphorically. So let's clean out these bearings. This one in particular is the really bad. This is the worst one. This is the front of this motor. Look at that. That's filthy. I can't believe this is working properly like this. This is exactly what I usually find when the motor is not working properly anymore. Lots of old, gummed up, dried up oil. This is a good lesson in always inspecting your equipment. Because even if it's working properly, sometimes it could still fare to have some preventative maintenance done. This would have eventually become a problem. Probably not too far in the distant future. One of these was definitely worse than the other. This one's not too bad, although the front is worse than the back on both. Okay, now we'll rinse it out with some isopropyl alcohol. I just spilled the isopropyl on this telephone. That's not good. This isopropyl alcohol is very good at getting this gummed up oil out of there. It's a very powerful cleaner. Okay, now we'll dry it out. I hear some noise pollution outside. Pesky noise pollution. Okay, that's all cleaned up now. So now let's get to these shafts. Actually, before we do the shafts, let's oil the bearings so that that can soak in while we're doing the polishing of the shafts. That sounds like a snake in here a little bit. Slippery. Yeah, this stuff should be slippery. That's how it works. Okay, so these bearings are what's called sintered bearings, and there's a felt-like wick material inside here around this bearing under this gold part, which holds the oil. And the sintered bearings have microscopic pores in them that will absorb the oil during operation. So you'll see the oil is soaking in there. What we want to do is put the oil around the outside here to be absorbed by the wicking material inside. And if this had oil ports on the outside, this is something you could do on a routine basis very easily. But this does not have ports on the outside, So that requires a full motor teardown just to oil it properly anyways. And it will take quite a few drops. Okay, that should be good for that one. I hear some more noise pollution outside. Duh. Not even in the frame. Okay, the bearings are oiled up now. So now we'll move over to the polishing machine. And we got to get this plugged in here. Okay, so now I like to get a little piece of paper to put around the shaft so it doesn't get nicked up by the chuck. So just wrap that around there like that, and then we'll stick this in here. Okay. And now we'll use some the semichrome polish to get this cleaned up. Here it is. New full tube of the semichrome polish. And for some reason there was a bubble on top, but it's been canceled out. Why isn't this working? Oh, this just broke. This is kind of busted. Now it's working. I can't believe how dirty this is. How is it working properly still? Well, geez, if it could work in that condition, it's going to work really great now. Okay, that's much better now. It actually has a chance at working properly, even though it was somehow before. Much cleaner. Smooth surface for the bearings to glide on now. So we'll go ahead and do that to the other one. Then we'll go back and clean it off with some isopropyl alcohol to get any remnants off. And then we'll be pretty much ready to reassemble. Jeez, a lot of noise pollution tonight. Okay, much better on this now as well. Now we'll clean off these shafts pretty good. Put some fresh oil on there. Put all the thrust washers back in place. And then we'll be ready to reassemble this fin. Yeah, I definitely want to go over this with the isopropyl because there's a fair bit of polish on here still. I thought we got most of it off, but not so. So we'll go through with the isopropyl. Stinking hot glue strings everywhere. The byproduct of a freshly balanced fan blade. Alright, we got some good and clean shafts now. Much better. I don't know how this is working as well as it was. Looking like that. That was absurd. Alright, let's put the polish away, cancel that out. And now we're ready to reassemble. So we'll put this back on in the order in which it came off. Sometimes if you have a rattly motor, you can put the front on the back and the back on the front, and because it wears differently, that will tone it down. You can also reverse the orientation of these and flip them around to get new wear spots. Some people are very bothered by that and like to put it back exactly the way it was. I don't think that there's one intrinsically correct answer for that situation. I like to put a little bit of oil around all these pieces to start. Okay, I'll put some oil on the shaft itself so it's got something to slide onto. And the front part has the thread, so that would be this part. Make sure the oil is really good in there. And then we'll put this on here like that. Put a touch of oil in here to start. And then we'll put that on there like that. A little bit of oil on the back. A little bit of oil on the front. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Some oil on there. Threaded side goes on first in the front. Now there is wording on here. So ironically, this one is both upside down, the other one is both right side up. If that's important to you, just reverse it. I don't think it matters functionally. Okay, so those motors are reassembled. Wipe off any excess oil that's anywhere. There is some. Okay, now we'll put the screws in. And these just go snug, not anything crazy tight. Okay, now let's see. Oh, we've lost both informations. Not good. So these are pretty stiff right now. This is normal. The bearings need to be aligned. Let's get the oil off of this shaft. It doesn't belong there. So what we need to do is we'll take a screwdriver, the handle. Where is the one that I normally use for this? Okay, there's several screwdrivers that are misplaced at this point. Stupid gnat. Okay, I don't know where the screwdriver I normally use is, but we'll just use a different one then. And we just take the screwdriver handle and strike the shaft in a couple different directions, and that will line up the bearings. Just gonna move everything around a little bit, and this should get nice and free. Okay, that's gliding about the way I would expect it to. This one's very stiff. Now that's gliding about the way I'd expect it to. Okay, so both of these motors are ready to go back in place. So now we have to let's shut this before it spills and causes some kind of unwanted freak show. That's typically the results we get around here. Let's get the shell back, which all things considered did clean up pretty well. These motors are surprisingly heavy for how small they are. Yes, it's wet. Oh my gosh. It doesn't matter. So we'll need to take this back out, which apparently is surprisingly easy on this make of switch, which is great. And let's get the motors routed. The only thing I do want to clean out, make sure it's dry, is all the holes where the screws go into. So I'll just grab the compressed air and we'll just blast out with compressed air the places where those holes are. I'm not concerned about any other moisture besides that. So these motors sit in here like this, and this one is going to sit over here like this, and the wiring goes underneath this tab like that, and underneath this tab like this. Yeah, this is landslides easier than the Holmes ones. I just wish the case would completely come apart. Other than that, I have no gripes with the way this comes apart for cleaning and servicing. This is very, very well designed for the most part. And you can tell, despite you know, there was definitely some cost-cutting measures taking place here. This is very cheap assembly, but it was still done well. And I think that's one thing that Lakewood was very good at. And even towards the end, when things were getting cheap, it was cost cut in a way that it still resulted in a pretty good product. And the same cannot be said about other brands. Other brands cost cut stuff to the point where it became a lousy product. I always like to try to find the original threads, especially dealing with plastic like this. I think it's important. Alright, let's feed the wire back in. And we'll put the knot back where it was, which was right around here. And this is all it has for strain relief, which is kind of cheap and cheesy, but again, it gets the job done. I'd much rather that get done like that than cost cut in other ways that really impact the design and performance. All these clips were going pretty easy until we got to that one. Alright, so on this cord, the common side is textured. So the textured side, which is this side here, this goes back with this. Okay, and then the high side goes into L on the switch. It goes in there surprisingly nicely. And then this, I believe, goes like that. It doesn't seem like it's locking into place though. Maybe it doesn't. That might just be the way it is. Try to cram as much of the wiring into there as possible. Alright, I think that's it. Now let's put the blades. So something I noticed while I was cleaning, and we'll underscore it quick here. These are completely different blades. Different molds. And lots of ones in this one. Backwards ones. They both required significant correction to the balance. Alright, good. Let's just make sure this is still working. Seems to be. So now let's close this up. And the only thing that's kind of flaky about this is that the switch has to get kind of just forced in place, which I don't like. It puts a lot of pressure on the apparatus there, but I don't see how else it would be done. Alright. Now we just got to slip the side curtains back in and we'll be done. I suppose we probably should have done this prior to putting the switch through there, but that's okay. I don't think it's going to take much to get these back on. It just goes like that. That's it. Yeah, I guess so. Seems to kind of screw into the accordion portion itself. interesting design choice. But I can't argue with it, it still works all these years later. It's strange, but if it works, then it works. And there should not be any questions asked if it's working well. I'm surprised that works. Okay, so that's not really moving very well at all. Is that a function of the tightness of the screws? It is. Okay, so we have to set this somewhere that's a balance between holding it in place but still being able to move it in and out, and I think we achieved that fairly easily. Alright, on to this side. So your screw openings, the tabs are up when it goes in from the back. And this lines up with this, the first holes. Yeah, that's even quite easy to do too. Well, Lakewood didn't build a junk fan. That's the wrong screwdriver. So you just want to do that until it kind of becomes stiff, and then it'll stay in place. And you can kind of see here the alignment. That's aligned right there. I'll have to put the screw through, kind of push it back to get the screw. Of course, it goes out of the frame. Something weird is going on here. Why is that not lining up? There we go. Okay, that's pretty good. And now we just gotta put the rest of the screws in. Now this will be all the Phillips screws. We have 3 long ones and 1 short one. The short one go up next to the switch, and then the 3 long ones go on the bottom here. Okay, I think we are all set here. Handle screams cheap, but again, I'd rather the handle be cheap than the motors. Alright, let's shut it on and see what we got here. Looks really good now. Not that it was too bad to begin with, but it's definitely much cleaner now. is the working. And there is still some vibration, but it's less than there was. See, these are very tricky with the balance because you have two blades, and so if they're slightly out at certain points, the two slightly vibrations, the slight out of balance vibrations, will create a larger, significantly out of balance vibration. So this, even though it's vibrating a fair bit, the blades are in pretty reasonable balance now. And you can feel it only vibrates on like a 60 cycle, like every second, a pattern. It's not just constantly out of balance, so it's that harmonizing effect of the blades not running at exactly the same speeds. I wish it was in perfect balance, but it's just not, and it's not worth the time to get it there. Yeah, that's much more reasonable than it was before. It was vibrating pretty bad before. Now it's pretty reasonable. Let's get a current rating on here just to make sure that it's working to spec. Uh. 1.1.24 the amps, 70 the watts, power factor 47. Very poor power factor. Lots of current, quite a bit of power too for okay amounts of air. The problem with these fans is that they're relatively low CFM because it's a small blade, but this one feels like it pushes the air almost all the way out to the side, so maybe this one has a pretty good CFM rating. Pretty moderate noise level too. Quite like this unit.